What's happening, sports fans? We welcome you back to our first show of July. Does training camp start this month now, Colton?
Yeah, they start this month.
Holy hell,
People's
training
dead
camp.
periods are ending. It's almost time. And there's football next month.
So do I need to take off my track and field shirt and switch it out for some football? Also, shout out Crawford. Shout out Crawford Track and Field. Always appreciate the love. Christian Pedersen, Colton. I don't know what. He'll be to my left. Colton Tull. We're back with another preview. This is not a watch list. This is not like we got to throw out the disclaimer. This is not us ranking anybody. This is just us looking up stats, looking up film, doing our best to highlight and talk about what might be this year. Last time, if you want to go check out our quarterback edition, we did that already. This time it's running backs. And I will say this, Colton, I'm actually glad that you are here as a former offensive lineman to help us do our running backs one, because to me, running back is actually the hardest of all of the positions to figure out how to project out.
Oh, it's so difficult.
Unless you're Reggie Bush or someone like who's just a God-given talent type situation, it is so hard to sit here and look at numbers and stats and all that kind of stuff, and even film, when in reality a running back is very often made by the five dudes in front of him.
That and scheme, totally.
Yeah, scheme to a little bit. I think sometimes scheme gets, personally for me, overvalued, because if you're a dude who can run through somebody physically, like, you could have a horribly drawn up offense and eventually you'll grind out that 100-yard game on, even if it has to be on 35 carries. But if you're always getting first contact is at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield,
oh, it's so
like, you're never going to get that rhythm. And you're never going to get that rhyme. And that's something that's hard. Like that's something that's almost impossible to figure out, because you, Colton, I don't know, like, what was your body transformation from sophomore to senior year? You were a starting offensive lineman all 3 of those years, but like your overall effectiveness changed.
Oh, you're always constantly on weight, muscle. It's difficult.
But then also the line changes around you and you get better every year. But then the guy to your left is graduated 1 year before you're at your best.
I went in. My sophomore year was me and another sophomore starting. We had 3 seniors. 3 graduated, and then it was us and 1 senior, 2 juniors, and then our senior year we had us, and then 3 new sophomores starting or something.
Yeah, so we're going to do our best to talk about running backs in the upcoming season that people need to pay attention to or get excited about, but also just know that with the undertone of all of this, we say we don't know what we're talking about necessarily, because this is not a running backs and offensive line show. We will do an offensive line show eventually. Colton, though, you had somebody kind of circled as the leader of the pack this year in San Diego to look for running back wise.
I think he's the talk of the offseason. UCLA commit Roger Robinson out of Lincoln. 1,200 rushing hours last year, 17 touchdowns. He's built like a tank. He's 6'1", 220. He's the guy who's saying he's going to run through people, but he's so athletic too. There's clips of him in passing league in this offseason throwing touchdowns at quarterback. He's one of the craziest athletes we've seen in San Diego. He's going to put up an insane year. Obviously, he's playing with Lincoln. Lincoln has a great offensive line. He has athletes all around him. It's going to be historic.
Historic. That's a bold take for a young journalist, given the fact that running backs are like one of the few things that we have actually produced here in San Diego. But I'm down for it.
I think he's going to fall right in that category, because like in my opinion, running back's the premier position in high school, because you don't have guys at quarterback developed as well as they are later on in their career. So it's hard to get like an air raid offense. So a lot of teams go to running, and like that's why you see so many running backs just have insane seasons in high school.
Well, I do think it's interesting that the running back category, at least from this year's branch, and I think that this does apply overall to the wider conversation. You're not as top heavy in terms of the divisions. Like our conversation about quarterbacks, unfortunately, skews a little bit toward D1 and open type quarterbacks, maybe a D2 like a Jax Leatherwood, or 1 or 2 guys down at like the Clash Osborns. Like, there will be a dude, but running backs, I'm looking at this
top to bottom, because you got
D5 through D1. There are dudes. There are dudes with however many O's and O's you need to put in there to have people fully understand how you feel about them. One of that groups, though, that I saw that I'm really interested in is Xavier Bay Hirano and Marcus Macon.
The Palo Verde duo.
The Palo Verde. We got the dirty duo from Palo Verde. I don't know. We got to come up with something for them. But
out of Blythe, California, baby.
Out of Blythe, California. Saw them in the championships last year. They're both juniors coming back with a combined, almost 5,000 yards. Macon goes for 2,790. Bejarano goes for 1,930. That's a lot of yardage for one of those two to be coming back.
No, the fact that how are they bringing both back? Like, you guys just came out. Like, it's insane. You're returning it. Like, they're probably the best two-headed monster in the county with those numbers. And you're getting both back?
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting, though. Marcus Macon, 303 carries last year. I don't know if the name Cale Patterson means anything to you or
Orange Glen? That
Orange Glen guy. He was the only running back that we've ever seen with over 400 carries. And that's just where, like, we're crazy that Macon breaks 300 at 303, and we still got Cale Patterson at 4. There's like 417 for a season or something like that. But 300 carries is not a flash in the pan. He didn't just figure this out on a couple of big runs. That's some grinded out ball. So dare I say, like, look out for Palo Verde to be like rushing leaders in the count, like to be the premier rushing offense. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little
bit. Those guys. They're going to be up there.
Who are some other guys you got circled this year on the running back list? Because I'll go down while you're figuring that out. I'll just tell people: Lucky Sutton, Christian Washington, Frankie Francina, Elijah Lux graduated. Top 4 running backs in terms of overall production from Cathedral, Helix, Rancho Bernardo, and Patrick Henry gone. Graduated.
Mm-hmm.
Of the top 30, probably about half have graduated. So some of this is going to be returning names. Some of this is going to be breakout stars. We're not going to have, I doubt Colton and I have either of those, any of those breakout stars figured out. So in terms of the returning guys, Colton, who are some other guys you got circled?
I think a super underrated guy is Major Givens out of Steel Canyon. People with Steel Canyon gets lost. They played a high division. They had a not a great season last year to their standards, but he had 1,500 yards, 12 scores. He's another guy. He got near 300 attempts. He's going to get the ball. He's going to eat. Super underrated player. He's super good at safety as well. That's a guy that could probably pop off for 1,700 yards easy.
I do love that when we're looking at this, all of these guys are 2 or 3 positions here.
That's what I noticed too. Running backs are most of the time probably the best athlete on the field in high school.
Well, and in the era that, like you said, we're in a kind of a devalued running back era where it's just not quite as premier of a position. And so I love to see now that, Major Givens gets 390 carries and also played 500 snaps at safety. And you're just like, man, that's an indestructible human being.
That's a grind.
Speaking of indestructible, Kyle Gordon caught my attention at El Cajon Valley. I think that El Cajon Valley over the last, I don't even know, 10 years has been largely overlooked, if not outright irrelevant. They've struggled with coaching turnover. They've struggled with numbers at their program. They were one of those schools that got down to like 30 dudes on varsity a couple years ago. And to have a premier running back,
it helps the program a lot.
Helps the program a lot. Because if nothing else, I mean, from at least my limited knowledge of football, having a running back means you can hypothetically control the tempo, control the pace of games, you can at least keep it on your plan opposed to playing to the opponent's plan.
That's the key to upset is time of possession. If you can keep another team's offense off the field and you have the ball with a running back, there's a less chance of turnovers, in my opinion. It's a really good way to win a game.
I also had, if you don't mind going to the North County, Derek McClintock coming back next year I guess it's this year now for Vista. Vista have been a team that's been identified as a running squad the last couple of years, being 2 or 3 running backs deep. He seems like he's going to be the premier guy at Vista this year. Also up in the North County, Connor Rath at Poway High School is another one that he looks poised to break out. If you want to say a breakout this year, put 129 a game last year. Pretty impressive clip for him. Poway seems to also always be one of those ones that has 2 or 3 running backs deep. So
Poway, their offensive line's always big. Poway's a wrestling school. They're going to have some big dudes on the O-line. You can put a lot of people in that backfield, and they're going to produce behind that line.
Although wrestlers can be deceptively small and still strong and powerful.
No, yeah, it's insane. Wrestlers are one of those where it's like you could have a guy. It's crazy. Wrestlers are some of the craziest. Like
you could have a guard who's like 5'10", 175, and you're like,
and he can.
And the next thing you know, he is just
he's running behind him. He's their main guy. It's like what?
Again, he is Hulk thrashing Loki left and right. And you're like,
you're like, wow.
Oh, that guy's a state. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, wait. That guy didn't even make state. He's the 19th best wrestler on Poway's team. What the hell is that? But yeah, so Vista and Poway, two big running back, type producing schools that you'll hopefully see them as the lead running backs this year. Back down to the South Bay, Fabian Venegas from Sweetwater looked like he was going to maybe be one of the oh no, I'm sorry. I apologize. I have one tab off there. He was the graduated one from Sweetwater. So Sweetwater is one, though, that produced a ton of running backs or produced a ton of running yards out of their wing sweep tee that they've got going on. Curious to see if that continues next year without him was the point that I was going for there. Apologize for getting a little ahead of myself. Someone that I'm really curious about, and I did wear this as a somewhat homage to him, is Hamadi Sharif. This is a kid from Crawford who we have heard a ton about for a couple of years now. Coach Marquez was in here post the pandemic shortened spring season thing saying, hey, I got this kid. I got this freshman who is about to blow up. Hamadi Sharif. And now it's Hamadi's little brother is also in there. But as a senior, I think it's time for him to step up. And I'm not calling him out, but I think that this, from what we've heard hype-wise, it seems like he's on the progression. 1,700 yards last year, 200-plus carries.
All right, he's going to be the guy.
Marquez, though, knows how to build an offense around a guy. And I'll be curious if this is going to be the year where they give him the rock and they say, hey, yo, you gotta get us to 8-2. You gotta get us to 9-1.
Yeah, you gotta build around a guy like that for sure.
Well, it's also his senior year, and if they've been talking about him, they've been trying to tap into that potential, and it feels like
it's one of those things. He's been developing the last 3 years. It's time.
And 1,700 yards is not a bad season at all
for
a 10-game season, but for somebody who your team has had you circled on the calendar since freshman year, like let's go, big year hopefully for Hamadi Sharif. Looking down the rest of this is where we kind of fall like numerically, we're past 15 to 20 to 30, like we're into the low 30s just in terms of overall stat leaders from last year. And I hate trying to extrapolate past that point without us actually seeing some football. But I think that we're also remiss in saying that like Cathedral's going to have a good running back this year. Oh no, Felix is going to figure out a good running back this year.
Out of nowhere.
Saints is going to figure out a good running back this year. Madison's going to there might not be some dudes in here who are
Tyson Bryant out of Madison. I had him on my list.
Who is that?
I'm Tyson Bryant out of Madison. I'm so high on Madison going next season.
Yeah, okay.
He's going to be. I think he's going to have. He had 800 yards last year. I think he's a guy that could add 400 more yards onto that with that offense. That's a guy that's like.
Who else you got on that? Anybody else you got on that list?
I have Gino Trapasso out of RBV.
Love it.
He's in the backfield with Underhill. It's a really good quarterback running back duo. It's like two guys they really like. He had 1,400 yards last year. He's a guy that could eat. Those two I think are pretty underrated, but guys that could definitely pop off and put their name in the conversation.
Well, and part of the conversation that we do have to be very realistic about is that sometimes some of these offenses just don't need a running back, but some of these guys are the best running backs. And like an Anthony McMillan at Mater Dei Catholic, they might only need 600 yards from him this season.
Well, because he's going to be splitting with Nico Mosley as well, isn't he? They have that little duo as well.
Well, but also we talked about Nate Nankill as their quarterback on our quarterbacks to be featured. They also have Trey White, who might just, as a defense, score a bunch of touchdowns. Like there's some of these where we just don't have the ability to project out that,
whoever Brawley throws at running back is probably going to rush for 1,300 yards.
Yeah, well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that we don't have the ability to like we go for just stats right here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that on some of these like guy X at school X has 600 yards, but those ended up being the 600 yards that sent them to the Open Division playoffs. Guy Y at school B has 2,600 yards, but they ended up fifth in the D4 playoffs. Like it's hard to objectively say what are like the most valuable yards. We're just trying to say who is going to. I think maybe the title of this one should be who are going to be the most uh, flashy, productive running backs or something like that. But that's a general feel for it.
Yeah.
I think that that's a coverage of who at least the two of us completely uneducated slobs feel like are going to be some of the running backs that need to be paid attention to in San Diego. Look, if you guys have
It's a fun position, man.
if you have hatred you want to send our way, names you want to send our way, anything like that, hit us up. I'm at Mr. Seaped. He's at Pro Colton Tull on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find the show at SD Prep Insider. Colton, anything else before we get out of here?
I'm excited for football, man. High school football is nothing like it.
Yeah. It's I think it's still a little early to send out the tweets that are like football this month because
next month.
Because let's be real though. Like
yeah,
training camp isn't and this is get off my lawn. Like training camp isn't what it used to be. Training camp is no longer the like murderous 2-a-days where you're bashing each other's brains out. A lot of teams are surrounded around like we got to keep everyone healthy. We got to keep everybody just happy and like let's build towards the season. So I'll say football's back when it's like scrimmages maybe. But I do agree that everyone should be hyped and everyone should be excited. We'll talk to you soon, sports fans.